Hey, TJI listeners, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now YouTube.
Please like us, subscribe, and leave some comments. We want to know what you like, what you want to hear more about, where we're going. You know, I love doing spots for products I truly believe in, and the Freedom Boat Club Dallas is a perfect example of that. I've proudly partnered with them on Louisville Lake since 2018, and they later added Freedom Boat Club Texoma. Freedom Boat Club takes the hassle out of boating. You show up, you grab the keys, your boat's ready, you spend the day fishing or skiing or tubing or just cruising around. And then when you're done, you hand the keys back and head home. I've owned boats before, and I can tell you firsthand, ownership comes with expense, maintenance, and yes, headaches. Freedom Boat Club changes all that. Membership includes unlimited access to Louisville Lake and Lake Texoma, plus reciprocal access to 15 other Texas locations and more than 440 worldwide. Initiation fees start at about $1,900 with flexible monthly plans. If you've been dreaming about lake life without the hassle of ownership, Freedom Boat Club is for you. Just call the number 972-532-1901. Let's go boating.
Hello, listeners, TJI listeners. We're back with part 3 of Waco Redux. This one is the untold stories, of which there are many.
And actually, I sat down and put this on paper for several different documentary production companies and got really big interest in this. I have not been able to sell anything to a streamer to actually write the check, although that's another story. The streaming business now is pretty weird, but there really are significant untold stories, and that's what you're going to hear if you stick around for a little bit.
In 1993, you had the Waco siege. Major news story. Chaotic beginning, chaotic end. We've covered all the parts there. You were there. You had a front row seat to history. But there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
As much as this story has been told in scripted and unscripted documentaries and movies and TV series, there are untold stories. In fact, since I retired in 2019, my major efforts now are in developing documentary projects, and I'm having some success in that. So this episode is really going to focus on what I put together for a pitch for a Los Angeles production company that did the last really good Waco series for Netflix. And one of the key guys in that series was the reporter on the scene when it all broke out, the Waco massacre or the Waco siege, whatever we want to call it. And John McLemore and I went to this production company out of London or out of Los Angeles and said, we've got this untold stories. They liked the pitch. They took it to Netflix. Netflix said no, but it's one I continue to pitch, and I think there are really good untold stories, interesting, not good necessarily, but compelling untold stories that people have not heard about yet.
Not heard about. So you saw the coverage and you get it. There was a raid by the ATF, a firefight, FBI comes in, long siege. They decide to end the siege, so they use tanks to knock down walls, shoot tear gas, burns. A lot of people lost their lives. The untold stories, one that really I'm most curious about is the photographer who captured that first video. What were the circumstances around that?
Okay, I titled this in the pitch that I'm putting out, The Reporter and Photographer That Waco Destroyed. Now, you can Google that headline, The Reporter That Waco Destroyed, and you'll find a really excellent 2018 story in Texas Monthly. Honestly, I did a much fuller telling of it in a feature that ran in KDFW TV, Fox 4 in 2003. Actually, we were still a CBS affiliate at the time. Just before the 10th anniversary, I did a series of reports designed to lead up to an hour documentary on Waco, which did garner an Emmy nomination, no hardware, but it was largely overshadowed again in the frenzy of the approaching war in Iraq. So this 10th anniversary, I'm about to be sent to Iraq to cover the story there as an embedded journalist. So there's a lot going on in my life, but I was putting this 10-year anniversary story together. And one of the stories I did leading up to the documentary was the story about John McLemore. And he was the reporter who was there on the first day. He and his photographer had gotten a tip, and they were there when the shooting started. And they were courageous. The bullets were flying. He was on there's a shot of him in the front seat of his news car. John's ducking down because bullets are coming through the windshield, and he's calling on the radio. You got to get people. This is going, he's trying to tell his station to call the police and tell them what the sheriff's department, everything, what's going on there. This gunfight has started.
So they were actually in mortal danger.
They were absolutely in danger. And the footage that Dan Maloney, his photographer, shot, we discussed this last episode. The most dramatic news footage I have ever seen, and I expect to ever see again. And it was just incredible video. Now, let's put this in perspective. If you are a newspaper photographer and you get the shot of Jack Ruby shooting Oswald, that picture is yours. And every time it gets used, somebody's got to pay you a license fee for it, right? So this photographer has just shot the best news footage, the most dramatic news footage, the most awful news footage anybody's ever seen, but he doesn't own one frame of it. The TV station owns that. So he risked his life for all that, got nothing out of it. So let's just be honest about the difference between photographers. I mean, somebody who shoots the picture that wins the Pulitzer Prize, that's mailbox money for the rest of his life. A news photographer works for a TV station, risks his life to get this footage. He gets nothing out of it.
If he was a freelancer without a specific contract, it would belong to him.
But yeah, the guys who work for TV stations don't own any of it. Okay, so let's go back to that. They're reporting on the first day. John McLemore is like 25 years old. He's a young, really good-looking young guy. He risked his life. He kept his composure in the midst of this terrible thing that's happening around him. And I saw some of his live reporting while waiting for my photographer to arrive at Channel 4. And again, we talked about this last episode. We were getting our butts kicked because even though he's a CBS reporter, his station had chosen to contact Channel 8. So they're using his live stuff to kick our butt. And as I said in the last report, tables were turned at the end. We scooped everybody at the end. That's the way it works. Sometimes the bear eats you. Sometimes you eat the bear, right? So John's just doing this really good job. And everybody who saw his stuff down there, Dan Rather arrived a few days into this. And John has told me that he heard numerous times from other TV journalists, myself included, Dan Rather included, you did a hell of a job. Son, this is going to be your ticket out. I mean, those are the kinds of things he's hearing from everybody because he did a fantastic job under extreme pressure, a live shot for hours, calmly explaining, showing the video. It should have launched his career. And again, Dan Maloney shot the most incredible news footage I've ever seen. If he'd have been a still photographer, he would have had money coming in for the rest of his life. Okay. Macklemore and Maloney further risked their lives. Once they finally got a ceasefire and the shooting stopped, they helped evacuate the wounded and the dying agents in their news car. There's video of mortally wounded agents on the hood of the news car and others in the back. It was, as I remember, kind of a SUV kind of a thing, right? And Maloney, there's also video of this. Maloney's just doing his job. He's filming this going on, and unwounded ATF agents suddenly come and start kicking him, knocking him down, and beating him up for doing his job. Stop that camera, okay? I mean, they're risking their lives because they could have been shot at any moment. The Branch Davidians, the ceasefire was pretty tenuous. And these guys are risking their lives. Okay, that's part of the story, okay? But they're getting accolades coming in. Both of them should have had a clear path ahead to a good career because they'd done a really good job.
It didn't go well for the ATF. And this guy's got footage. This happens today. It happens all the time where authorities get mad at reporters for reporting, photographers for shooting what's in front of them. So I guess, is that what happened to this guy? Now they didn't want that footage out there. A little bit late.
They were embarrassed. A little bit late. And also it came out later that they had sent their own film crew out there, videotape crew out there, because they expected to be this triumphant raid where they're going to, ATF agents with ATF on their windbreakers, hauling all these people out, they expected this to be a real PR win for them. We'll talk about that more later in the episode. But so, yeah, that's the way it happens. If they'd have been triumphant, they would have loved having but things go wrong. Suddenly the messenger is the problem, so you beat up the messenger, which, is pretty unfair, but things happen. Okay, it gets worse. ATF agents began talking to reporters, whispering in anybody who would listen that it was Maloney and McLemore that had tipped off the cult that they were coming. It wasn't. Came out later, it was another photographer who was looking for the scene, had gotten the same tip, but he happened to stop the postal deliverer, the rural route postal deliverer, to ask for directions. And he asked for directions to the Branch Davidian compound, and it turned out that the postal guy was part of the Branch Davidian group. So that was the fight. They suspected they were coming anyway. Robert Rodriguez, the ATF agent who had been planted undercover, he knew they suspected they were coming any time now anyway. But McLemore and Maloney didn't have anything to do that. They were just there doing their job. The ATF did not alert these guys. This is not a case where the ATF says, hey, you need to come out and cover this. At least I don't believe that happened. I'll ask John next time I see I'll confirm that. But they got a tip, and I think it came through. The ATF had alerted local ambulance services that they may need to be on standby Sunday morning.
And of course, in news, you have the assignments desk. You're listening to scanners. You're plugged in.
Right.
That's how you break news, because you find out things and tips. So ambulances. That's where the tip really came from. Somebody had told somebody at Waco CBS and maybe one other station that something was going on. They didn't know exactly what it would be, but something was going on. Okay. Now, I talked about ATF agents beginning to whisper in the ears of reporters that it was really Maloney, and that the reason this all went bad is because the reporter and the photographer tipped them off, not saying that their own ATF agent had told them, don't go, they know you're coming, right? It gets worse. One of the reporters who listened to that was named Kathy Walt. Walt then worked for the Houston Chronicle. She was a newspaper reporter. She later became a press aide to Governor Rick Perry. I don't know if she's still around, but she went on ABC's Nightline. If you remember back then, ABC's Nightline was a nightly show that aired at 10:30. She went on there and reported this as if it were fact, about how the TV guys were to blame for this. The ATF agents were telling her the TV guys were to blame for what had happened. She didn't name names. But the next night, a reporter at Channel 8, again, the station that McLemore had done all this great reporting for, went on and did a story on the nightly news, ran the clip of Kathy Waltz saying it was the TV reporters, and said, this is who she's talking about. John McLemore and Dan Maloney. I mean, it's so crazy, right? McLemore and Maloney rightly sued. And their lawsuit for libel and slander won at several different levels. But it finally got to the final appeals court, and they threw it out on a technicality. So they got nothing. But in the meantime, this took months, years, whatever. In the meantime, every time that John would apply for a new TV job in Houston or Dallas or whatever, I mean, he's the guy that's suing Channel 8 and because they said he tipped off them. So he couldn't get a job in the business. Yeah, he's absolutely damaged. Now, he actually, John, to his credit, went on to have a pretty good life. He went to work for Conoco.
He was like a spokesman for Conoco and traveled the world, wherever they get oil, Middle East or whatever. And it did lead to, I don't know if it led to, but he and I have talked about it a little bit. He did get divorced. It certainly caused problems in his personal life. But he went on to have a good life. He's a really good guy, and I consider him a friend. And on that 10th anniversary, I did that story about how this had destroyed their careers. Dan Maloney got a job in Houston, which is a big step up from Waco. And but he only lasted a couple of years. And I want to be delicate with this, but he went back to Waco. And friends tell me that, he might have had a drinking problem. Let's say he might have had a drinking problem, but within a few short years, he passed away in way too young. And most everybody you talk to, at least that I've talked to, that whole Waco thing really ate at him, just the way he was treated in it. And it's a sad story and mostly untold. And
it's similar to somebody in a war zone, PTSD, and the fog of war and different things going on. I still can't get over this tip. Now, it's 1993. There are no cell phones. You would react differently trying to find out information. You got to go to a phone or whatever. So how would a station go about getting a tip from somebody working for an ambulance company?
Well, it usually happens with, my brother, my sister, one of my friends works for them, and they say, oh, by the way, there's something going to happen out at that crazy compound.
And we're talking Waco is not a big city in 1993.
Especially 1993 is bigger now probably, but yeah, so somebody got a tip, and somebody at the news station just said, well, maybe we ought to be there. So that's how McLemore and Maloney came to be there. They were assigned to be there. And I don't think they got the tip. I think somebody else got the tip, but I could be wrong about that.
So, and I know in news departments, you're sitting around, you're on call, it's your shift or whatever. And the desk says, hey, we just got a tip. Hey, you guys go out there. We got a tip and you get like basic information, and you walked into a firestorm. There's raids all the time that do not go wrong, and people get to see that. It's for a reporter and a photographer, that's like exciting. When you first hear it, you might go, oh, great. And no more city council. I get to do a fun thing.
Makes great TV.
Makes great TV.
And that leads us really to another untold story that I would entitle ATF Campaigns for Funding with Ride-Along Raids. Now, these are raids, and this happened for about 2 years leading up to the siege in Waco. And again, I was working as a reporter in Dallas, and the ATF agents were routinely taking myself and other reporters from Channel 8, Channel 5, and they would take us along on these busting down the door raids. They would have ATF windbreakers on, and they would, bring out the people and bring out the weapons, and it would make a great story. Now, that was going on back then. In fact, it went on quite a bit until Geraldo Rivera, America Vice crew, tagging along with a drug raid live on national TV in Houston when they broke into the wrong house.
Uh-oh.
Oh, so after that, big lawsuit, after that, agencies didn't do that, and TV stations wouldn't do that because you didn't want to get sued. But all that happened after Waco, right? So at the time, the Dallas Bureau of the ATF was a major bureau for the region. And they had a PIO who I really liked, a young woman at the time named Sharon Wheeler, Public Information Officer. And Sharon and others, I don't know if it was her or it was others, I think she may have added to the story, but it became clear to me, because you have a lot of times standing around waiting for these things to happen and everything, and they might have even told it off the record at the time, but basically the FBI was tired of, or the ATF was tired of the FBI getting all the attention and the lion's share of the funding in Congress, when often the ATF was doing the labor, and the FBI would come in at the last minute and get all the reporters would see guys with FBI jackets, and they will interview the FBI, and ATF had become really tired of that. So it was my understanding, at least, that that was what sparked these ride-along raids. They wanted to get the attention to what they were doing, the great things they were doing, so that the next time they went to Congress for funding, they could get what they needed to do, and that the FBI wouldn't Bigfoot them out of everything. And that's what led up to Waco. This was meant to be a big show of force and success for the ATF. They sent along their own videotape crew. I've never seen the tape that came out of it, if they shot any. I doubt they shot any. I'm sure as soon as the shooting started, they put the videotape away. But they expected this to be a big PR boost for the ATF. Now, the problem was when they got there, they were outgunned and the thing went horribly wrong.
They did not have good intelligence somehow.
Now, well, they had good intelligence that they didn't listen to. Again, Robert Rodriguez, who was the ATF agent who had infiltrated the Branch Davidian compound, the morning of the raid, went straight to his superiors who were preparing to go and said, "You have to call it off. They know you're coming." And they went anyway. Well,
here's a question I have then. And they went anyway. He infiltrated. The original raid was because stockpiling weapons.
Right.
Did you ever hear, was there an accurate account of what they had? So if I'm planning a raid and I go, all right, listen, guys, they've got machine guns, they've got this much ammo, grenade launchers, whatever they had, you would approach it differently. They almost approach it a little too cavalierly.
The raid had been planned with the assumption that it would be a surprise. Sunday morning.
First thing in the morning, they had a big cattle trailer with all these guys in it. I don't know how many agents were in it. 20 guys in a cattle trailer. As crazy as that sounds, that's where they went in. They went in with multiple SWAT-like agents, but they were outgunned. In fact, Sharon Wheeler, my friend, who was the PIO then, basically, really fell out of favor because a day or two later, she's in a news conference in Waco and she said, we were outgunned. They were outgunned. But the ATF did not want their PIO saying that on TV, so we didn't see anything of Sharon after that. No, it had the opposite effect. Instead of the raid making them look good, it's like, you guys, you didn't know they had all these weapons? I mean, you're going there because they had weapons, but you didn't know this?
And again, the story gets worse, okay? Because the whole thing, if my theory is right, and I think it is, the whole thing was a publicity thing that they thought they were being overshadowed by the FBI. When it goes wrong, the FBI comes in and rubs ATF's nose in the mess they've made. They sent them packing, said, we want all you guys out of here. We're going to take over the negotiations. And they did. And of course, they moved the whole gaggle of reporters and photographers back another mile so we could still see the place, but you had to have a long lens to get much of a picture. So again, exactly what the ATF was angry about, this raid just confirmed that every time they try to do something, the FBI is going to Bigfoot them and rub their nose in it when it goes wrong. So the bad blood there, I can imagine, still exists. And again, if listeners if you want to challenge me on that, that's my hot take. We talk about hot takes. That's a hot take.
So we'll stay with hot takes for now. Well, my hot take, I guess, is ego is the enemy. In a lot of situations. When you're two departments competing for funding from Congress, and you have a bunch of guns and unchecked power, your ego will get the best of you. And it looks like that might have been partially the case here. What does the ATF, what is their function?
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms department. They basically regulate those three things. And most of it gets into weapons and explosives and that kind of thing. So it's not as clear cut as the FBI, which is more of a broad-based investigative unit. But I think that may be part of the problem with the ATF is a lot of people don't know what the heck they do.
No clearly defined mission.
Right. They have a clearly defined mission, but it's not one that the public, if you tell if you ask, as you just did, what does ATF stand for? Most people I don't know.
I knew what they stood for. It's like, but what do they do? I mean, we have so many police units.
Yeah.
I got to tell you one of my takeaways, because I noticed this with that dramatic footage from the poor photographer, and he held his shots. You record what's in front of you. You let it happen in front of you. This guy did that. At any point, he could have panicked and moved his camera. Look at that, look at that, look at that. But he kept it on that window. He kept it on those guys. And he got people firing handguns. I couldn't believe that shot. There was ATF agents 50 yards away firing handguns at windows. What are you guys doing? I didn't get that. But kudos to him for holding his shots. No movement. Every shot was steady. That's one of my takeaways, is how he handled that amazing situation without panicking. And in those days, 1993, it was not digital yet. So you had videotape. I don't know if he had beta or 3/4.
I think it was beta by then.
But in the camera, you were limited to 20 minutes. So, and I heard in the background on keep rolling. And he said, you're going to have to go get me some more tape, because you're going to run out of tape. And it lasted more than 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So it stopped. He kept his composure. That's my takeaway, is that guy got some brilliant stuff.
I let me add to this. He was being interviewed by all of us who arrived later. Everybody wanted to talk to Dan Maloney about the incredible video he had taken. And I remember him looking, you said PTSD a little bit ago. He was shell-shocked. He just had this like 1,000-yard stare. And I mean, he was repeating he gave good, coherent answers, but it was like he was in shock by what he had seen. And how could you not be?
Pretty amazing. So I feel for him. So, but wait, there's more, and there's always more to these stories, but one more about him and some of the other players involved. Well, you told me there's some of the Branch Davidians are still alive, and the reporter and the photographer. You said the photographer passed away?
He did. He went back to Waco. He had a couple of years in Houston and decided to go back to Waco. And Houston's big time. Okay, that's top 10 market. And you can make a good living as a photographer in Houston. If you go back to Waco, you're making peanuts. It's a really small station. You're going to have a lot less staff. They're going to work you harder. So it's less money for more work. It was definitely a step back down.
And to your knowledge, he never got any money. Did he win any awards for this?
I can't imagine that he didn't, but I don't know which ones he would have. And again, some stations aren't very proactive about even submitting that kind of stuff. Channel 4 was never very good about, if you wanted something submitted. I mean, I really feel like I could have won a lot more awards, but I had to pay for every entrant myself, so I only went with the ones I thought
Hold
was
on
sure
there, buddy.
get.
That's a hidden secret of that. Yeah, I paid $150 for my Emmy.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's the way it goes. Well, poor guy. But you can imagine in those days, they didn't offer him therapy. You know how stations now have whatever it is, employee assistance.
Yeah.
They probably didn't have any of that.
Now, not a market the size of Waco would have had a very small budget, a very small staff, and
no, and not in 1993.
And that's if you're a young reporter like John McLemore, you got to start a small market like that. But if you're good like John was, you don't stay in Waco. You're gone to Dallas in a couple of years because you're good.
Any fallout from the ATF or the FBI? Any structural changes? Did this result in anything like that?
I think that the ATF probably suffers to this day with what they've tried to. I mean, everybody involved in this raid, they had long congressional hearings and all this stuff came out. I mean, you've got Robert Rodriguez testifying to Congress. I told them, they know you're coming. Don't go. And they went anyway. So, I mean, a lot of heads rolled. I'm sure it destroyed a lot of careers. And I'm sure it damaged the ATF for many years. And you really don't hear much about the ATF anymore. And it's certainly not like it was the 2 years leading up to Waco. I got to tell one more untold story here because we did promise this last episode. As we said, everybody went home on the Friday before that Monday, day 48. Satellite City cleared out, including me. I went home. I was the tri-anchor out of Fort Worth and doing a lot of field anchoring. And it's a Sunday morning, as I said earlier, or Sunday afternoon, and I'm fishing on the lake with my son, one of my sons, and I get a page from the news director. You got to be down in Waco. Get your go bag and go. And I picked up my photographer and we went down to Waco because something big's going to happen. Of course, we all the way down. Nothing's going to happen. This is crazy. I can't believe they're making us go down there. But he wanted us awake at 4 o'clock in the morning and on scene by 6 o'clock. And we went to Whataburger and 4:30 in the morning. And we were on scene 6 o'clock in the morning where the tank started knocking holes in the wall. And again, there were only 2 photographers, as I recall, or 3 photographers, as I recall. And then myself and Vicki Mabry, who was a CBS reporter, and her photographer. And then Vicki had also told a friend of hers who worked at Channel 5, but with the caveat that she could not tell NBC. She could only, that if she was only being told, I'm sure she could even tell her station why she had to be there, but she was there. Now, the story about how that came to be is a good story. Vicki Mabry was an attractive young lady, probably still is an attractive lady, and she had been the lead reporter on Waco, and she was the CBS reporter, and I was a CBS affiliate guy, so we worked together, fed on the same satellite, and I got to know her really well. She was a really nice lady and attractive again. Apparently an FBI agent, I'm guessing, who had taken a shine. Is that age me to use that term? Taken a shine to Vicki. He tipped her off that the FBI was going to do something dramatic on Monday morning.
Loose lips sink ship.
Well, this ship sailed down to Waco. So that's how I came to be there when all this happened. And we talked about this earlier too. The beginning of the story, in TV news terms, we got our butt kicked because the CBS affiliate guy went to ABC Channel 8 instead of us. At the end of the story, we kicked everybody's butt for the first 4 or 5 hours of the final siege. And that's how I came to be at that site, 6 a.m. in the morning when they started knocking holes in the wall and putting in the tear gas.
Isn't it funny how life has these twists and turns? So a potentially romantic relationship between an FBI guy and an attractive female reporter ends up being a tip. She happens to work for the network that's also
my network.
Your network.
Your network.
And that's how you end up back down there. And I heard inklings, but I didn't know all the details. But do you know what happened to that FBI agent?
I do not. I don't know his name. It was a he. I don't know. I'm pretty sure she did not have romantic designs on him.
It was just him.
But he might have.
He was trying to impress her. What an interesting story. So you tried to make a documentary. Do you still have like the outline, the pilot? Where is that? I
tried to dub it off. Of course, we're talking about the old beta tapes or whatever it was. And I did get some of it dubbed off, but I've never been able to find a complete copy of that, which I would like to have. And I thought I had it on VHS, but I've never been able to find it. But I've got parts of it. And so I've been able to watch it. It was really, I did 2 versions. I did a 30-minute version and an hour version because they wanted to run the 30-minute version, I think, at like 6:30 or something. And they wanted to run the hour at 10:30 or something.
And there's still interest in that story, even today. Any of those things where you don't have closure. But wait, there's more. I said that earlier because something happened. And we're going to do another podcast on that.
In fact, it was something horrific, maybe even more horrific, happened in Oklahoma City. And by now, everybody's guessed what that is and probably knew that before we talked about this. But we've got some pretty good backstories, both Brian and I did, because as much as what happened in April 1993 upset our lives and not upset, but certainly became the dominant thing in all of our lives who were working at the TV station at that time for months, Oklahoma City would have a similar effect. And again, there was a lot going on, including, and I don't know if we'll get into this or not, but Jerry Jones had upended both the NFL and network TV. And the same day that Oklahoma City happened, Brian and I and most of the staff were in the station being informed of a huge shakeup and change that changed the face of not only Dallas-Fort Worth, but really all of TV and the NFL. Jerry Jones he's a story, man.
We are back. Many untold stories. Anything else to add to this? Any update? Any legs for documentaries?
I think there are, once the streaming business settles down a little bit. We had a labor strike here a couple of years ago that pretty much roiled everything, and there seems to be a reluctance. The streamers are having trouble figuring out where the whole business is going. I know we've talked about this in some of the other episodes too, but so many kids, they talk about the fourth screen. How you reach young people who only get entertainment and news and whatever off their phone. And so I think Hollywood in general, in the entertainment business in total, is kind of struggling right now with figuring out what way to deliver this kind of programming. Of course, documentaries, long-form documentaries, you got to have an attention span for that. And I think increasingly young people don't have an attention span to watch a 4 or 5 part series or an hour and a half, 2 hour documentary. But we'll keep plugging away at it.
Okay, I would like to learn more about it. The story still intrigues me. I don't have any conspiracy theories. It's just, how did something this tragic happen?
So with anything that sparks conspiracy theories, there's always things that just make you wonder. And the JFK thing is another one, of course. How could that have happened? How could this happen? Well, people fill in the voids with conspiracy theories, but there's just a lot out there that aren't conspiracy theories that need to be examined. At least I think would be of interest to people to be further examined. So we'll keep plugging on that.
Okay. TJI listeners, we will talk to you next time. Thanks for joining us.
We enjoy you guys soon.